Tokyo James is one of the most interesting designers to watch in Milan Fashion Week right now, but his slow rise to relevancy hasn't been without controversy. So, to tell the story of how the brand came to be, in this video we'll need to talk about his facings with racism, homophobia, and accusations of cultural appropriation. But let's start at the beginning. Tokyo James was founded only 7 years ago, in 2015, by Tokyo James, with the goal of challenging the stereotyping of African design and masculinity in general. This first collection is actually rumoured to have been offered funding from the Fashion Focus program, which, although untrue, was fueled because the beginning of Tokyo James, the label, came years after working in the fashion industry, mostly in marketing and advertising, as well as some magazine work, which in reality is exactly what funded this and actually most of his collections afterwards, so is directly reflected in his work, even from this first collection. Spring-Summer 16 was named Exist, and it debuted in South African Menswear Week, along with an advertising campaign which ran in Fucking Young magazine. From this first collection, we can see some great branding at work. He's clearly come into this with a concept for the label and knew exactly what he was doing visually, presumably from his marketing background. Which means brand key signatures are here right from the very beginning, applique/embellishment, blazers with this slim silhouette, and the combination of some kind of animal skin, mostly snake skin or faux fur. He's very obviously thought about his brand positioning and what buyers may be drawn to at the show, so it's an incredibly strong start to any company. However, more than the clothes, the way the media has related to Tokyo James, especially considering the substantial amount of money invested in marketing the brand, is easily the most interesting part of their development as a company. The brand even produced a lookbook campaign for the first collection that ran on several popular blog sites influential within the African fashion sphere, so wasn't playing around and wanted his brand to be known and respected right off the bat, even without a physical catwalk show. So at this stage, he had clearly well formulated what he wanted to do with the business side of the company, but unfortunately, even though the design is decent, it lacks one crucial element. The garments were a little unimaginative, they weren't really distinct enough, meaning that he didn't get much buzz from the collection, and that led to the brand not having any stockists for this collection to my knowledge. However, this did not stop the brand, and by Autumn-Winter 16, a show named Freedom, they began showing both at Lagos Fashion Week as well as South African Fashion Week. The second collection is much stronger visually, most notable in its styling, but furthered by a return of the key signatures I mentioned before, applique/embellishment, slim blazers, and the combination of animal skin-esque fabrics. And actually, these elements are present in literally every collection from the brand from here on out, so I won't be mentioning them again, despite it probably being the smartest move from a retailing perspective to develop on this core product offering that you think your audience can come back to season after season. All in all, it's yet another strong collection from the brand that is both on brand and well straddling the line between creative and commercial. However, it was not received well by the media in Africa, which was his primary audience at the time. Firstly, the media said that the overarching message in this collection was unclear and unconnected, and secondly, they thought it was a bit ignorant showing collections that were clearly not meant for the audience that South African Fashion Week would cater to, being that he was showing fur in the hottest continent. But the biggest critique the brand would receive from this collection is from the usage of a symbol known as an arawa. The arawa is a Nigerian symbol with a long and old history dating back earlier than the royalty that was in power before the British colonization, but doesn't have a distinct known etymology. The symbol has since been adopted to symbolize the union between the Hausa and Fulani people in Nigeria in the 14th century, after which they had land-based disagreements with the tribes in the south that led to the divide between the north and south Nigeria, in which the newly double-barreled Hausa Fulanis used the arawa to symbolize their dominance of the region, arawa meaning north in Hausa, which is still a pretty contentious divide in Nigeria that still exists today, and so some people in southern Nigeria may find it offensive, with this blogger even accusing him of cultural appropriation. So I reached out to Inye directly about this on Instagram, and it seems from what he said that these online critics haven't had the full story. Inye chose the symbol because both the Hausa and the Yarawa people use it as a sign of unity, which is poetic that both came to find the same meaning in the same symbol independently of the other. I did also research what the symbol meant to the Igbo people of the south though, and I didn't get positive results. We do go on to talk about the Igbo people again soon, so for now, unfortunately and somewhat unfairly, Tokyo James was having a rough time in the media. because it can be taken as an offensive symbol, as noted in these reviews, which seem quite offended by the usage. No statement was ever needed nor made by Tokyo James for what I could see, and the garments were still used in the advertising campaign for the season. But his mistreatment from the media doesn't end there. Spring/Summer 17 was also not well received by the African press. Despite how good it is and how much work went into it, there's just almost no press on this collection. However, in my opinion, it's a very strong collection from a branding perspective because all the key signatures are there and it's commercial enough to sell. To be honest, I don't think he's put out a bad collection so far, but they just aren't as attention-grabbing or shocking as they may need to be in order to get people excited. And even though from here is a definite incline in design through Autumn/Winter 17, Spring/Summer 18, Autumn/Winter 18, Spring/Summer 19 and their accompanying ad campaigns, they still struggled to get the media on board with this point of view, which led them as a business to continually struggle to find stockists, even at one point saying that he had just one stockist, a private boutique named Wish. Inye himself seemed to think this was probably down to racism and European designers being favoured over African designers, both in Nigeria, Africa, and worldwide, which is probably a good portion of why his brand wasn't being respected. We can see from articles like this that not only was he facing racism in the industry in general, but he was also facing a lot of homophobia within Nigeria. This kind of discrimination clearly has some real-world implications for both the business and for Tokyo James as a person, which is a real shame to see a person with such incredible creativity be completely overlooked because of the media source's preconceived prejudices. I'm actually shocked about how many rumours and untrue things I had to clear up with Inye via Instagram, so a big thank you to him, because in all the videos I've had so far, I've never seen it to this scale, and I genuinely think if a European brand started with such strong branding and with the marketing budget that Tokyo James had, they would have been much more successful than just having very few stockists and barely any good press. So in that way, Tokyo James has been for a long time a victim of homophobia and racism to the point that it has actively hurt his business. So unfortunately, even with all these collections in South African Fashion Week under his belt, he didn't have any real good press, except for this interview by Italian Vogue on his Autumn/Winter 18 collection and this interview by Elle for the Spring/Summer 19 collection. Everything online just mentions him in name, in passing, with little to no comment on the actual brand, and instead seems to be more focused on his personal life. So when he was invited to show for Autumn/Winter 19 at the newly revived and newly heavily funded Arise Fashion Week in Lagos 6 years after it went on hiatus, he rightfully jumped on the chance. He'd been showing already in Lagos as well as the South African Fashion Wear Weeks, so it wasn't a huge jump for him to go with the Arise Fashion Week schedule, and Naomi Campbell was slated to walk for a whole bunch of designers during the week like Kenneth Ise and Triple R. So with all of the extra press present at the fashion show, it's here that he starts to get the quantity of reviews that his brand really needed for them to gain some notoriety within the African fashion scene. It seems perseverance in his brand image is finally starting to pay off, and the bloggers in the fashion industry are finally starting to pay attention. But it's becoming quite evident that Africa might not be the best place to show off his work, considering how unwelcoming the scene there had been towards him. So he decides now it's about the right time to move his collections to his other home, London. Meaning that for Spring/Summer 2020, he presented his collection in collaboration with TTYA in London Collection Men, as well as continuing to also show in Lagos. Spring/Summer 2020 was really the first big push for the brand coming into the zeitgeist. It still hasn't got to that level to make it buzzworthy yet, but the collection was incredibly strong, as all of them so far had been. But now that he's on this larger platform, it allowed for more people to get to know the brand. And truly, from here is where Tokyo James really sees a decent uptake of organic sprinkling of support from the media. A few online sources review the collection, and I've yet to see a negative review of this show. It's clearly a great first impression to the brand for the European market, as it includes a well-developed aesthetic that's now been perfected over his years showing in Africa. From here, it's a sharp incline in success for the company for Autumn/Winter 2020 and Spring/Summer 2021, both of which showed in London Collections Men as well as Nigeria. But the real breakthrough of the brand would come in Autumn/Winter 21 at his Milan debut. The collection, as always, keeps brand consistency at its core, expanding on the world of Tokyo James. But something important about this collection that may have been the key to its success is the context in which it was held. Milan, as a fashion week, revolves around that Eurocentric demographic that usually means a slow development in tailoring with very bold colours and prints. Tokyo James, both as a person and as a brand, fits so well into this. It's exactly the same note I had about Who Decides War when I said that the message doesn't have to change if the context in which it's received changes. And it's through this calculated risk to Milan that Tokyo James finally found their market. You'll remember at the beginning of the video, I said how, because of Inye's background, they really understood the marketing and the branding of the company. And they did. Their product offering is inoffensive but interesting, accessible fashion. But seemingly what they were missing to reach this new success is who their brand philosophy would speak to. With this new Italian context, he's introduced to the sumptuous luxury element that brands like Versace and Roberto Cavalli have built their entire businesses on. To be clear, Nigeria famously has many extremely wealthy people who do enjoy that loud luxury aesthetic. You may be familiar with Hush Puppy, who, although isn't a great person, is a great example of the type of opulent luxury that was popular in Nigeria at the time that Tokyo James was coming up. But this demographic seems more focused on flexing labels generally than on the extroverted aesthetic that is popular in Italy. So though they do have a lot of crossover, they are quite different. So it may explain why it is now that Tokyo James sees his very long-awaited rise in popularity. This, to me, is truly what makes the company interesting, more than the clothes itself. Marketing and branding for small businesses is always tricky, so to watch him develop his brand from something online critics described so negatively and were happy to spread rumors about, to now finding his audience that his vision truly speaks to is just incredible. And it goes to show that finding your real audience is the most important thing for any company. So, with this new context, rightfully, the collections are now reported on in glowing reports. Enough to get the attention of Vogue, who for the very first time with the Autumn/Winter 21 collection featured them on the Vogue runway site, which is a great indicator of success within the industry. And clearly his business was seriously viable following this, because his Spring/Summer 22 collection really upped the ante. The Spring/Summer 22 collection is spectacular. It's literally the first time he plays with silhouettes to this level, but done totally in a way that doesn't alienate the development of work that the brand had been putting out. The collection is meant to reflect his brand's journey, likening themselves to the outcasts of the Igbo people in eastern Nigeria named Osu, which literally means outcast. Online, the Osu caste system is often brought up in the same conversation as modern-day slavery, which obviously is a controversial topic to have based an entire collection around. So I again reached out to Tokyo James to understand this fuller. He said that the Osu people have nothing to do with slavery, but instead are people rejected from their own cultures and are almost made to be part of the Osu caste system in Igbo land. These people that are refused to be a part of their own native culture are people that Inye related to. He too felt somewhat of an outcast both from the fashion scenes in Europe and Africa just because of the way that his brand was being perceived. Obviously, I literally talked about this earlier in the video with battles of both racism and homophobia, so it's very understandable as to how he would feel this connection to the Osu people in a way that's almost a shame that this reference may have been lost in the Milan setting, especially if others like myself were to research online and find the apparently untrue likenings to modern-day slavery. The meaning may have been lost or potentially offensive even to the European audience, like the Arab world was before it, which in parallel I genuinely don't think the European people would have known to be a controversial symbol. But luckily, he didn't actually see any backlash for this, and instead the reviews for the collection were widely very positive, which I somewhat doubt they would have been so conclusively positive if it was shown in Nigeria primarily. Which means that his brand was gaining prominence in the Milan sphere, all before releasing the breakout star collection of his label, the Autumn/Winter 22 collection. The pushing of silhouettes has now evolved with the brand ethos to a point that enhances the company's strong foundational consistency, so now it's able to push that creative edge into this, the first collection that's really evolved from his aesthetic while still fitting into the Tokyo James world. It looks like the reason for this may have been a slight shift in who they feel the target market is. No longer does this look like it's geared towards posh conservative people. Now it's presented as much more youthful through the styling of staple pieces enhanced by creative garments like this cardigan jacket or this jacket dress. It is this collection that made most people who've come to know the brand want to get to know them on a deeper level. But more importantly, It is the reason the label was nominated for the LVMH prize, and although he didn't win, he did make it to the top 8, which is a huge achievement for a brand that has been trying to make an imprint on fashion for such a long time. So it's no surprise that the brand kept their new creative edge for their Spring/Summer 23 collection that just showed in Milan. We see the return of quite a lot from the previous collections in this one. The silhouettes and the pattern cutting is really aesthetically similar, lots of black generally, as well as the fiery hues of red and yellow, but also in green and blue, which remind me of the frocks from the previous collection. I think this is very clever because they've clearly seen what worked very well in the previous collection, analysed it, and developed on that. From a retailing perspective, this is super smart, as buyers will know what the consumers were interested in from the previous collection and be able to develop on that, making it a bankable collection for them, which may lead to bigger sales for Tokyo James. The collection is very strong, and it's obvious as to why it became one of the buzziest brands of Milan Fashion Week, which often doesn't have that many brands to push in this way. Other than Matty Boven, actually I don't think there are many artistic creators in Milan, so I hope he continues here for a good while. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to see more videos like this, or continue watching more videos like this one here.